Hello everybody, I just did want to give a forewarning that if the audio sounds a little weird, it's because the sponge part of my microphone that goes on top is missing, so I'm going to have to look for that after this video. But of course, if you're new to my channel, please make sure to subscribe. If not, no big deal. Now let's get into week 4 and its recap. So of course, this was the first game of the week and it featured the Edmonton Elks taking on the Ottawa Redblacks at Ottawa. Both teams have long losing streaks at home. Neither side had a win before this, and we also got to see two quarterbacks get their first starts of the season, that being Jared Daggy and then of course Tyree Adams. Adams would go on to tear his ACL in this game. We wouldn't find out about that until a few days later. Anyway, it was his side though that looked better early on in this one, as it was him and Marco Dubois that had a good connection to get the team on the board to lead 7-0. Ottawa continued to build off of that with some field goals, and they ended up going up 16-0 at the half. The fans, which was a listed crowd of 18,000 plus, were up on their feet and excited, as it looked like this home losing streak was going to end, and of course things would go their way a little bit forward too. Edmonton would go on to score to make it a little bit better of a game in this one. I think it was 16-7 at one point, but it was Demontre Tuggle who had a touchdown, which really put this one away from Edmonton. And of course, Ottawa fans were ecstatic as the team won 26-7. Main takeaways here: the Redblacks ran the ball 30 times, threw it just 20 times. That's not very common, of course, in the CFL, but with Adams getting his first start, you have to imagine Khari Jones probably at least wanted to keep things 50-50. Of course, seeing 60% runs is pretty impressive here. But yeah, also for the Redblacks defense, they made the Elks' life pretty miserable. The Edmonton offense had 14 drives, which resulted in 9 punts and 3 interceptions. I also believe they had a turnover on downs. They did score, so at least they didn't get shut out here. But for Ottawa, this is their first win of the year. Yes, they lose Adams, but of course, Jeremiah Mazzoli is slated to return. And for the Elks, they slipped to what now? 0-4 on the season, and things look pretty dramatic there as Chris Jones's seat warms up a little bit. Of course, he's a GM too, so it might be a little safer. But yeah, bad loss for the Elks. Then the second game of the week was Montreal hosting the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and of course this one was a game that you really got to see, would Winnipeg bounce back after a bad loss to the Lions, and would Montreal be able to hang there with a true contender, because of course the Elks started the year 2-0, but they are a team that nobody can seem to put their finger on them and say you are this, and so this was going to be a really fun game. And this one was actually delayed by at least an hour and a half because of inclement weather. The field was pretty wet, and this was also a game that was not super high scoring. Winnipeg was missing some guys. Of course, Dembski, I think, missed for the birth of his child, so congratulations Nick Dembski for that. But in this one, we saw Drew Wolotarski get the opening touchdown of the game to give the Blue Bombers a 7-0 lead. A field goal in the second would make it 10-0, and that's what it would be at the break, as it was, not a crazy blowout by the Blue Bombers, and that was that there at halftime. Another score later in the second half would go on to happen thanks to Dalton Schoen, so this one would be a 17-0 lead for Winnipeg. Montreal would get on the board with the field goal a little bit later in this one, but really failed to do a lot. Keon Julian Grant did have a big reception, which I think was one of their bigger plays of the game, and then Austin Mack also had a pretty good game in terms of, looking at the simple stats, had over 100 yards. So those two looking pretty good there in terms of, just a simple game logs. But in general, the Alouettes weren't able to get a whole lot going here, as they end up losing this one 17-3. Brady Oliveira was a workhorse for the Blue Bombers in this one. I think he got something like 20 carries for over 100 yards, and the Blue Bombers bounced back from a big loss against the Lions, or at least a discouraging loss to the Lions. And then the Montreal Alouettes, I don't want to say that this is, a good indicator that they are contenders, but they were able to not lose by that much to Winnipeg. Of course, the weather could have played a factor here, but if Montreal is able to do that against some other teams that are more that top tier status, that's really good for the Owls. Then the final game of the week, of course, this one being on a Monday, I thought I was going to get to watch it, but my family had a birthday party for my grandpa. It felt like a surprise birthday party because I found out like the day of. So basically, while this game was going on, I was there. There was no signal, so he couldn't even put it on the background or anything like that. No big deal. But this one, what do you even want to say? This was a very painful loss if you're a BC Lions fan, and unfortunately for me, I am. This was a game coming into it. It felt like the Lions defense was going to be the talk of this game and was going to be a factor, and got to see, what they were going to be able to do after being so great to start the year. And instead, it was Vernon Adams Jr. that was kind of the talk here and the offensive line. Keon Hatcher, of course, made his comeback. This was his first debut of the season. And yeah, that was kind of that there, as Vernon Adams Jr. would go on to throw 6 interceptions. I think going back at this one and looking at it, a lot of people don't feel like all of them were his fault, and it does seem like he was under a lot of pressure. He had 9 interior pressures in this game, as the Argonauts defense is no joke, but still 6 interceptions anytime that happens, and the team is able to get points off of those, especially a pick 6. I think there was a return touchdown as well. That is going to be a problem, as the Argos make a big statement here, winning 45-24. Will they be able to do that every time? Will they be able to rely on 6 interceptions? Not necessarily, no, but to be able to, have this one in the back of their memories and say, hey, remember when we beat this team and we were able to do it by such a big amount? Could be a big deal come playoff time, as my dog is stretching. But for the Lions, this does feel like a pretty bad loss. Maybe an eye-opener to kind of say, we're not immortal, and that we have to be able to, play safe with the ball and clean things up offensively. But anyway, those are the games this week. I do apologize for getting this one out late with 4th of July going on and just the week schedule being moved around with days off from work and my wife's work schedule and just some of the other stuff that happened through the week. It was harder to get these videos out. And hopefully the audio isn't too bad, because of course the little sponge part of the microphone is gone. But anyway, what is your week 4 thoughts for this week? As only 6 teams played, I'd love to know down below in the comments. Everybody, please make sure to stay safe and have a great night.